Alright, let's turn this down a little bit. Hey, what's up, all the peoples? So, hey, look, it's been a minute since the new T12 came out, and I guess it was like a little bit over a week ago, right? Because the updates always drop on a Monday. So, I did an update live stream, and I said, like, I'm not going to get these for a while. I completely forgot that I had, even though I didn't have enough resources, that I had optional resource chests L, and so I was able to get the T12 plus, the new fatties. I've been able to get the infantry fatties. I got them the same night. I just completely forgot, that I had that access. So, I've been playing around with them, and I know that a whole bunch of us have been playing around with them in Peak, and so, like, everybody has pretty much had access to these new fatties. And, I mean, look, you get them in Peak, you can try them in Peak, you could crash your game in Peak. Holy shit, this thing is still buggy as hell. Get away from me, cat, I'm busy. So, anyway, if this will stop giving me the spinning wheel of death, we're going to talk a little bit about the T12. Because, look, I've seen, there we go, the crash. I've seen people have been talking about them in the community, and I think that a lot of people don't really know what to make of it. I mean, famously, Odad has quit the game, or at least isn't playing anymore, or isn't spending anymore, or whatever. I mean, because of these new T12. So, like, he got super PO'd, and he made some announcements, and, I mean, I saw him in Peak, and he had a single T8 in each comm, and I mean, I wonder why he has anything in Peak, but, you're gonna lose with a single T8. So, all indications are that he is not playing anymore, and I've seen a lot of people get kind of, either confused by these new T12 or angry by these new T12, especially players that have been T12, So let's talk about all those things. So, I mean, look, number one, what is the difference, right? This is the big thing. What is the difference between old T12? Look, I'm going to be talking mainly about infantry during the course of this video because I have infantry. No, press that button. There we go. But, a lot of this can be extrapolated to the walkers and to the air. So, same amount of units, right? It's 300 units for each. That's not the thing. But check it out. It's got less HP, so 15,000 base on my Great Sage fatties, and 20,000 on the Transcender. So, excuse me, it is a reduction, 25% for HP, right? Because it's 5,000 less base. Okay. And look, all of this stuff just gets magnified by research, because remember, the research is by percentages. It's not base value. So because they're not whole number values, they're percentages. Everything, all of the differences in the stats end up getting, I don't want to say exacerbated, but they end up getting elongated, So, I mean, look, they're different. It's because each level has a percentage of the main versus actually just being a stepwise fashion. So the fact that the Transcender has more HP is, look here, 20,000 plus 42,000, so it's 62,000, right? And this is 15,000 plus 31,500, so that is going to be 46,500 versus 62,000. So, the gap gets widened, okay? We're gonna do some math here tonight, but I can't teach you basic math. That was terrible, I'm sorry. So, let's go on to attack. Attack, 1,200 on the Transcenders, 1,600. Boom, on the infantry fatties. And the deal with this, the important thing with this is, like, look, okay, so fine. The HP went down by 25%, but the attack increased by a third, right? 1,600, plus another third of that, 33%. So look, 1,600 plus 4,800 is 6,400 attack. 64, this is 4,800. It's substantial. And in fact, this was one of the things that, especially for infantry players, that infantry were lacking this real attack bonus, right? Excuse me. And so what infantry players had to do is they had to start like they had to go into HP because look here, the tear space ability uses HP, and their HP sucked. So tear space was just terrible, and for a very, very, very long time, infantry players were fighting an uphill battle. Whereas when T12 originally came out, we had look, the Walker players, Walker players loved it. They got their tear space. It wasn't later that they started hating it when they realized they didn't really have any good comms, But then what? Air players loved it, right? Because air just goes the hell into HP anyway. And what with Vega being a big thing, it's like people were really, using defense anyway. They were going heavily into HP. So, bonus. They're tanky. It's tankier. Now they actually do some damage based on the tank, which, that was just awesome for them. But for infantry, it always sucked. It was just I've been a T12 player now, in infantry, 7 months now? A little bit less than 7 months? Maybe 6.5 months? Man, it sucked. Basically what T12 players had to do is they had to build a completely new set of gear. And they had to build this gear that was geared towards the HP stat, which is something so unnatural for infantry players. So you start out the game, you go heavily into attack and you go heavily into dodge. That's through all your base research. Once you get past your base research, you start unlocking T9, and T9 is great for infantry players. It represents a real step upward, and actually you have somewhat of a capability to tank a little bit, whereas before you couldn't because there's defense when you compare the T9 to the base tier in other troop types. So it was actually something, which is great. But the more heavy you go into attack, it's just the game rewards you over and over again. So with T9, you got access to air comms, which was great because you could throw golem at people with infantry. How awesome is that? He just did a ton of damage. It was unreal. And then, T11 come by, and yes, you have to swap up a little bit, so you're not using the air for your damage as much. But you could do Walker stuff now for damage, and you could use strength and weaken effect with infantry T11 against other infantry because of the Walker subtype. This is all great, and it all plays into utilizing attack, utilizing dodge. I mean, look, Hoodoo loves to do a ton of attack. He's great for stuff like that, and Medusa hits so often, so being able to do more damage on those hits is amazing. Pictor does a ton of damage. Again, these really play well into infantry capabilities. But then Come T12, and none of your gear works if you're infantry. You can't use a Devastation Helm. You can't use an Eye of Abyss. None of this stuff helps you. It reduces HP, and that doesn't align with what T12 need. So what do infantry players start to do? Well, for a very long time, they just kind of scratched their heads and went man, this new tier sucks for us. T12 sucks for us. And we were trying to figure out how do you do shit with it. And it wasn't until a few different players really started testing and realized, you know what? You have to ditch the damage gear. So people started doing tests. Great players, Justin did a lot of the tests, Soloy did a lot of the tests, Char did a lot of the tests, and this was all happening behind the scenes in the community. And what all of these players, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some players, but what all of these players and more figured out is that as an infantry player at T12, you have to ditch the damage gear. It's not helping you. So people went into Valkyrie, people started looking at different comms that we could play, and Nico became popular again. Gilly became even more popular than she was at the time. Stella even finally found a new niche for herself, and she became a disabler or a tanky class rather than the one-slot bust that everyone had been seeing from Stella for years now. So all of this happens, and over a period of maybe it took 4 solid months before viable infantry T12 builds came on the scene. Finally, they come on the scene, and players deal with the fact that they have to now get a new set of gear for T12, and it has to be completely different. Like, the Infantry T12 set is very odd, and it allows for very little deviation versus, like, the Walker sets and the Air sets, the Infantry sets. There are very, very few options, and you have to lean heavily into those options. You have to go Valkyrie, you have to go 2 Titans, unless you're going for a Stella, in which case you go 2 Eternal Barriers. There really isn't a place for 2 Wild Roses. Like, it never had its heyday. You have to go Shadow, but you have to have Void swap outs. You have to have Nixa at the ready to be able to dodge stuff. You know, so people got used to this concept. But always, the T12 infantry player was fighting an upward battle. And we had to be okay with healing your comm more. Every comm became like a bullet. It became very expensive. But then, finally, we got our new T12. And for many players, when they look at this new T12, when they look at this, they're confused by it. I'm here to tell you that the new T12 are not confusing. The reason that people are so confused by them are the new T12 are a return to the conventional playstyle that we had up to T11. And we've been playing without this playstyle for a good 10 months now, or a year now. It's been an issue. But here we are, we're looking our past right in the face. And all you have to do is think about this in mind. So look. It doesn't have Terra Space. It has Ether Impact. And what Ether Impact does is it gives your stack a damage shield. It will absorb 50% of the damage that you did on your normal attack. As long as that hits, you get this damage shield. People look at Ether Impact and they get distracted from what the real story is here. And the real story of what the new T12 are in the stats. It's not in the skill. It's not in the skill. So like in the previous T12, right? Look, in the previous T12, it was in the skill. The reason that it was in the skill is that it was a way for us to do damage with such a low attack score. But now the attack is back. So the attack is built right into the stats of the unit. So don't look at the skill and go, oh, you get a damage shield. These things are meant to tank. No, they are not meant to tank. They are meant to do damage. And if you look at the ratios between attack and HP on these units versus the ones on lower tier, you will see this is much more in line with the way that the game was up until T12. The reason that by and large, there are 2 reasons why people are angry about these new T12. They are angry about these new T12 because they misunderstand and they think that they're tanks when they're not. They're just a return to conventional ratios and a return to glass cannon for infantry. So it's either people that are confused about the fact that they are tanks, or it's people that are angry that this represents a need to create a different gear set. That's it. So, for all you infantry players out there, for all of you non-hyper spenders out there, these units are great for you. Because they give you the capability, once again, to begin to punch above your weight class. Whereas before, especially with infantry, but with the vast majority of T12 players, had to deal with fighting an uphill battle before. Without attack, you don't have the capability as much to hurt people who are more powerful than you. The attack is restored here. So now you could start to do, your glass cannons are going to be way better now. And yes, you are going to get a damage shield, but honestly, all the damage shield is going to do is it's just going to mitigate a little bit of damage for you. You can't play a the new T12, the T12 fatties, the T12 plus, you can't play them like they are going to be tanks. They're never going to be tanking for you. So, like, the new airships, Ether Djinn, don't be using those with Rogers, okay? Rogers doesn't need any capability to mitigate more damage. By the time you're actually going to start to hit and get the ether impact on a Rogers build, it's not going to be until you start to actually proc Tyrant Cometh. Because unless you're proccing Tyrant Cometh as a Rogers, unless you're running an accuracy Rogers, you're going to miss every single time. By the time Tyrant Cometh procs, and then you actually get the sure hit from Tyrant Cometh, you're already rounds into the fight, and you should have already reached damage immunity by that point. These things are meaningless for a Rogers. You know, for an Elf, for a Reinhardt, for a Satalia, you know, I mean, I guess Satalia's a little bit different, but for Elf or Reinhardt, any tanks, these are not for your tanks. That's not what these things are for. These are for your one-slot bust commanders. It's for your Vega. It's for your Nico. It could be for a one-slot bust Stella, finally. Satalia might have some capability to use these, but quite honestly, if you're running these things on an Elf and not these, right? I mean, if you're running blue fatties on an Elf, you're wrong, and I'm sorry. I'm not here to try and make you angry, but I just want you to understand these troops, by and large, are for hitting commanders. They're for one-slot bust commanders. This is for glass cannon. It's for people that are trying to punch above their weight. It's not for tanks. So I play a Nico. I friggin' love these things. So I've broken out my dev helmet. I've tried to shine it up. It was only like plus 36. I have to get it up there now. You know, I got it. I broke out my Amazeballs again, man. It's a return to whatever you were running on your one-slot bust commander. Back when it was T11, back when it was T10, that's the stuff that you should be looking to running for this. You know, are you gonna need accuracy? Yeah, if you were gonna need accuracy earlier, you're gonna need accuracy now, right? Because tear space only hits when the unit actually hits. So too, ether impact only hits when the attack actually hits. You're still going to need dodge in the places that you would need dodge, you know, so, you know, do be careful, but this actually does give you the capability to run some more conventional stacks. Great. Let's talk a little bit about this skill, and then I'm going to let you go. So the skill, the way that this works, just like Terror Space, the attack has to actually hit. It has, so if there's, and look, you're going to ask me stuff like, whoa, what if Gemini procced? So if Gemini procced, that means your normal attack hit. It's whenever you do normal attack damage, just like Terror Space. So if Gemini procs, yeah, it's, on the first hit, it's going to be a short hit skill, and then you're going to get your damage shield. On the second hit, will you get it again? No, you won't on a Gemini. So for any short hit that makes your normal attack damage hit, then you would get ether impact. Let's talk about how that works on Stella. Let's talk about how that works on X and on Elixir. So the way that these comms work, these multi-attack comms work, is that every time they proc Wings of Eternity or Mysterious Wind, or I think it's Twin for Elixir, it counts as though it is another normal attack. So look, the way this thing works is you land your normal attack, you get your shield, the shield lasts until your next action. Then it goes away, then you take your action. So with Stella, with Wings of Eternity, the game counts her next action. The next time she would do normal attack damage would be when the Wings of Eternity procs. Now, here's the rub. When you do proc Wings of Eternity, what happens? You have a chance to do normal attack damage, but you do it at a lower multiplier. So when Wings of Eternity is at 60%, the percentage of normal attack damage that you could actually do is 90%, right? This scales at 1.5% per level. So when you first hit, if you land the hit, you will get your ether impact, right? It will be 50% of whatever damage you do. Then but you landed Wings of Eternity, so your Wings of Eternity attack happens next. What happens? Your ether impact comes off, because it's now your next normal attack. But here's the thing: let's say you land that Wings of Eternity, it only does 90% of damage. So the ether impact maximum threshold on that Wings of Eternity proc is half of 90%, which is 45%, not 50%. So it actually has diminishing returns on, well, it gets diminished whenever you use it on a Stella. So if Wings of Eternity procs on Stella, then your damage is going down a little bit, and it means that, yeah, your ether impact shield would be down a little bit. On X, I think it scales at 1% per level. No, that's Bloodthirst. There we go. 1% per level. So at level 60, keep in mind when Mysterious Wind goes, if she lands the hit, if her last attack ends up landing on a Mysterious Wind proc, then it's going to be half of 60%, which is 30%, instead of the 50% had she only hit on the first attack. Although I think actually every time this procs, what'll happen is the shield will come off. So you better hope you just don't proc the Mysterious Wind, basically. And I think the same thing would go for Elixir. Where is it? So Elixir, it looks like Elixir actually goes up, right? Yeah, so at 60 it'll be 120%. So her max threshold of damage would be 60% then on the ether impact. But keep in mind, again, these are not tanks. They're not meant to be looked at as tanks. You know, these are glass cannon, and it's a return to conventional playstyle. Dust off your Devastation helmet, dust off your Magewell pants, and have some fun with these new T12 fatties.